All right, this lesson is all about exponents once again. So, we already talked about what the 5 means on this first one. And so what the 5 tells us that we're going to have 1/2 5 times. And so this gives us 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. And so you multiply straight across. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And 2 times 2 is 4. Times 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. And 16 times 2 is 32. So 1/2 to the 5th power is 1 over 32. 1/3 to the 3 power means you're going to have 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3. And 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 is 27. So 1/3 to the 3rd is 1/27th. Now, what happens if you have 3/5 to the 2nd power? Well, that's just 3/5 times 3/5, and you multiply straight across. 3 times 3 and 5 times 5. 3 times 3 is 9. 5 times 5 is 25, and you get 9/25. Now, how do you work with decimals? So if you have 0.5 to the 2nd power, that just means you have 0.5 times 0.5. And so you do 5 times 5 is 25. You have 2 numbers behind the decimal, so we move it over 2 places, and so your final answer is 0.25. If you have 0.8 to the 3rd power, that means you have 0.8 times 0.8 times 0.8. This times this gives you 64 times 8. And 64 times 8, that gives you 64 times 8, gives you 2, carry your 3, 48, plus 3 is 51. So that gives you 512. You have 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal place, so we move it 1, 2, 3. And so your final answer is 0.512. Or 512 thousandths. And finally, 0.3 to the 4th gives you 0.3 times 0.3 times 0.3 times 0.3. This gives you 9, this gives you 9, and then 9 times 9 is 81. But once again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal place, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have to add a couple zeros. And so your final answer is going to be 0.0081. Because we moved the 4 places, we have 4 decimal places. Then the last one is actually comparing values. So if you have numbers and you need to compare them, you have to tell whether there's the same or one is less than or greater than. So you have to actually do each of these exponents. 3 to the 3rd power gives you 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. 4 to the 2nd power gives you 4 times 4, which is 16. So 27 is more than 16. So you're going to eat toward the 3 to the 3rd power. So let's do this one. 2 to the 6th power means you get 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which then gives you 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 8 is 64. 4 to the 3rd is 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. So 4 to the 3rd is 64, 2 to the 6th is 64, and so that means they are actually both equal. And then the last one. That is a 11 to the 2nd power. And so what we have here then is we have 5 times 5 times 5. And we have 11 times 11. Let's do the easy one. 11 times 11 is 121. 5 times 5 gives you 25 times 5 gives you 125. And so what we see then is that 125 is bigger than 121. So 5 to the 3rd is bigger than 11 squared. So if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. Enjoy working with exponents.